All right. So this is really exciting to have a guest for our meeting this time. And I just have a couple of quick updates I'd like to give. We've been working through the Conservation Commission with the Department of Public Works. They're very interested in doing a pollinator garden in front of their headquarters. And I put together a list of selected plants, and it kind of sounds like they like it. And this was based off of a document that I wrote up. I think I spent last year sort of percolating in my mind about native bees and specialist bees. And I kept getting places that wanted to put a pollinator garden in like a full sun location. I realized I was just making the same list over and over again. So I've written that up, and that was my recommendations for a pollinator garden. And I'm hoping.
Well, that sounds like something you should send to Melinda. That sounds like just what she's looking for.
He did.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Carol.
Okay.
Sure. And I'm hoping to turn it into a booklet, like something like this, which I just received today.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
This is from Penn State Extension Services, and it's just published. And I just happened to see them announce that they were giving away free copies, and my copy arrived. And I was really interested in the details about what their nests are like underground.
Oh.
And it even has what kind of soil they prefer. And
I have to report, I saw my first bumblebee queen today.
Cool.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I would give anything to know where she overwintered.
Yeah.
Could you tell it was a queen by the size, Sharon?
Just that it's the time of year when the queens come out.
Okay.
Yeah, you're only going to see queens. And also, speaking of squash bees, it reminds me, Watertown Citizens has a new group that joined us. They're called the Pigs Gusset Initiative. And it's about making sure that we remember the history of the people that were here for thousands of years. Pigs Gusset is the name that was given to the land we now call Watertown by the Pequawset Band of the Massachusetts tribe. And we believe it means something like the place where the meadows open out. And, you know, when we're thinking about the people who are native, we're very interested in helping the bees that were native. And one really interesting thing about the squash bee is that it actually originated in Mexico, where the squash plants were domesticated. And over 1,000, this is about 10,000 years ago, they think. And over thousands of years, the squash plant and the squash bee spread throughout North America because of the people that were farming it. And that's one of the famous Three Sisters. So yeah, I really love this really ancient history and being able to connect it to the place where we are now.
That's fascinating, Pam.
Yeah. And let's see, so there was DPW, and the other thing was I also contacted why am I having so much trouble remembering her name? My contact at Mount Auburn Cemetery about what we're going to do for Pollinator Week. And I can do the same Meet Your Bees presentation that I did last year, or maybe if I get really energetic, I'll be able to put together my pollinator gardens recommendations as a presentation.
So when is Pollinator Week, Pam?
Pollinator Week is the third week in June.
Okay.
So it doesn't sound like they're going to be ready to do in-person walks by the end of June, but they're definitely interested in doing at least a Zoom event. And I think we should probably turn the floor over to Alix. Eileen, do you want to introduce Alix? Or, well, what we know.
Yeah, I had the great pleasure of meeting Alix.
Uh-oh. Well, Alexandra Bartsch is, I understand, you're the point person for how Lexington got to be a bee city in Massachusetts.
I am, and I can tell you a little bit about myself. I live in Lexington, and I've lived here most of my life. My family moved in 1968, so I have a very long view of the town and the environmentalism. I was a biology major undergrad and studied environmental law in law school. And I've been keeping bees here since 1978, when I was inspired by my high school AP biology teacher. And so I have been, my daughter, who is in college now, and I are the Lexington Bee Company. I'm one of 3 Eastern Apiculture Society certified master beekeepers in Massachusetts.
Wow.
And so I'm doing a lot with bees, and I'm very interested in inspiring young people. I mentor the high school bee club. And I will also be speaking to school groups starting next year. I do it informally now, but I'll be doing it formally. And as part of everything going on in the Lexington Bee Company, what we do is we provide bees free for nonprofits and town properties. So we have an apple orchard in our town, and I have an apiary there, and the community garden, I have an apiary there, and we have an interfaith garden that grows organic vegetables and donates them to the food pantry and places like that around the conservation lands. I put bees for free, and we also have a private beekeeping service. So if you want bees in your garden, people pay me to keep bees. Beekeeping, I have a very long view of it. It used to be very easy in the 70s. Now we have all kinds of problems, which are fairly lengthy to go into, but it is so difficult and expensive to keep bees alive now that for many people, it makes more sense just to hire someone like me. So I generally just do it in Lexington because every apiary is personally supervised by me, and I can't go very far. So what I wanted to do, being very involved in all these aspects of beekeeping, I heard about the Xerxes Society Bee City program. And if you've looked, it sounds like you've looked a little bit at that. The Xerxes Society is a nationwide society for the preservation of invertebrates. So that's all kinds of bugs. And having the long view, I can tell you that about 90% of our bugs are gone. You know, back in the 70s, you may recall when all of our lawns had dandelions and clover. And now in places like Lexington and some of the suburbs, people don't want to see any of that. And Scott's created in the 70s the broadleaf weed killer. So, you know, you can not see any dandelions anymore. People put this on their lawns, so that's really hard on the pollinators. So I wanted to do something to try to encourage the pollinators and bring back some pollinator health. And this Bee City program is kind of a good focal point to do that. Much of what Lexington is a very conservation-minded town. We have an enormous amount of groups and people doing different things and people being pro-pollinator. And we also have town government that's sympathetic to that. So I looked at, I talked to the Xerxes Society, and there's no one recipe on what you need to do to be a bee city beyond the standard resolution, which I sent to you, and you can take a look at it. I think ours is, you know, slightly tailored for Lexington, but basically you need to have a government and a private partnership that supports pollinators. And they emphasize it's not just honeybees, although I personally have studied honeybees for decades and know more about them than anything else, but it's all kinds of pollinators. So here in Lexington, I I started with the Conservation Commission. I had been working with them. I also at one time managed the community garden here in Lexington before I became too busy with the bees to do much gardening. So I knew the players and I know the tenor of the Conservation Committee. And I talked to my high school club, who's been very active and very good. We have some wonderful young people who are very dedicated, and everyone was in favor of this. So we worked with the Conservation Committee, and they said, okay, we'll have a hearing. And we went down there, and my daughter was there, and I was there, and some of the high school students were there, and talked about what we could be doing for the pollinators and what we're already doing now, frankly, for the pollinators. And we got a unanimous endorsement from the Conservation Committee to support the Bee City prerogative. We also were sponsored by Citizens for Lexington Conservation. There's a $300 fee that we pay to the Xerxes Society every year. And the Citizens for Lexington Conservation is a group, much like yourselves, that chose to sponsor this program. So we had the sponsor, we had the Conservation Commission, and everyone was in favor of this. And then it was just a process of going before the town manager and getting onto the select board schedule. And that took an enormous amount of time, even though we were confident that we had the full support of the select board. You know, school committee things pushed it aside, COVID pushed it aside, everything pushed it aside. And finally, this fall, I started contacting the select board members directly. I was very concerned because the two co-presidents of the Lexington High School Bee Club were seniors and applying to colleges. And I said, look, everyone is in favor of this. It's getting wrapped up in red tape. These kids are applying to colleges right now. We need to have this resolved, because I know that for my daughter, and who wrote her college essay about bees, and for a lot of these kids, it's something that they put their heart into, and it's extremely productive for, you know, lots of different reasons. And it's something that you know, when they they had a slideshow ready, they had a presentation, they were ready to speak, they're articulate, they're smart. And finally, I was able to convince the select board, yeah, get it on the schedule. So we got it on the schedule, and then it passed unanimously.
Oh,
And then it's a question of, and you know, some of the questions come up, like the DPW. Well, is this going to change what the DPW has to do? That was the town manager's concern. And so I called the head of the DPW, and he said, I have no problem with this at all. We don't use pesticides in Lexington. We're very environmentally conscious. We keep our conservation lands growing. The only place where we use any real, you know, pesticides or lawn treatment is at the historic Lexington Green, which is a little triangle right in the middle of town, which is fine. I mean, that's practically you know, a showpiece. So we need to keep that pristine. I have no problem whatsoever with that. So the DPW said, fine, what do you need me to do beyond what we're already doing? I said, we don't need to do anything. You're already doing it. The only thing that I'm going to need is that when we become a bee city, you have to put one sign, and you'll probably see that on the website somewhere in the town that says Bee City. And so we're in the process of designing and having the sign manufactured now. And then after that, the Conservation Commission, and they're required to set up, you know, some kind of pro-pollinator, you know, town management plan. But we're already doing that. We already keep all of those pro-pollinator items in mind. So a lot of the things, and every year we have at our orchard a apple day. You know, of course, everything was canceled last year, but we typically have that, and the high school bee club participates in that anyway. So I said that's going to be our focal Bee City program. We're already there. We're already, bringing bee products and selling honey and giving talks about bees, and, bees and apples go together everywhere because every single orchard is pollinated by bees. So all of this was very easy to do, except for, moving government, which is very, very difficult to do. Government moves very slowly. Now, I sent you your terrible Watertown regulation, and I'm glad to hear that you tried. Because I didn't hear about this. I was chair of the Massachusetts Beekeepers Association Legislative Committee for years, and I was particularly concerned that these towns were popping up different kinds of regulations. It started in Boston, and then we were going to hearings in Cambridge, and then Belmont, as I mentioned it. We got wind of that, so we went to that, and Belmont was wonderful, and Watertown's, we didn't hear about it until after it was done, and I read it a few years ago when it came out. I said, this is just outrageously appalling. It's people have been keeping bees in Massachusetts for 300 years.
Right.
You don't. There's no reason to essentially give your neighbor a veto power over something you do. If your neighbor says, I don't want to live next to a house with cats, too bad.
Right.
You have a right to do this, and the Massachusetts Beekeepers Association has best management practices, which, we've said Belmont incorporated that and said, take a look, make sure these are some guidelines about how many hives you might have on your property, and how far you want it from the property line, and just reasonable accommodations for the neighbors. And that's all you need. Every single town has a nuisance law. And if a beekeeper is creating a nuisance, there's already ways to handle it. So my only concern for you folks is that Watertown has already shown a disinclination to be friendly to pollinators. So I don't know whether that's systemic or maybe the government has changed since that regulation was changed, or whether you're going to have some issues going forward with people who don't want to see bees. We spent a long time, and maybe you've heard, I guess it was about 5 years now, there was a rabbi in Cambridge who had bees on the roof, and oh my gosh, there was Board of Health hearings, and they came very close to outlawing bees in Cambridge. The board, and we had the rabbi withdraw because we could see the writing on the wall that the Board of Health was about to say, since honeybees are not a permitted use under our zoning code, they are prohibited, which is ridiculous because nobody has beekeeping in their zoning code. But some towns, it just, and Cambridge has a particularly onerous, we worked with them, and I don't know if they finally passed their regulation or not, but it was awful. And these regulations get written by people who know nothing about bees, except that they sting. But it's a part of life. They're going to be bees in nature, whether you allow them or not. So anyhow, I could, go off on a tangent on that, but I won't. But those are some of the considerations. And the place to start is looking at the resolution, seeing if it can be done, and then working with your Conservation Commission to see if they will support it.
Yeah, well, we started, I think I got serious about doing Bee City in Watertown. I think it was the end of 2019. And the Board of Health was very unfriendly to honeybees. But when I started looking at what Watertown can do, our DPW also does not use pesticides. So that was a good start. And I went to our Conservation Commission, and after a couple of visits, they got totally on board. I had the same thing, unanimous decision. Let's go forward with this. because Friends of Bees already does education. We do some events every year. And they were very interested in putting together some kind of pollinator protection plan, a habitat plan. That's something that we're just starting to work on. So it really felt like Bee City was very doable. But when we went to the DPW, they started asking, well, what's in it for us? And why do we have to pay $300? And even though Watertown citizens, which is what Friends of Bees is part of, were like, we could pay that. It kind of got stuck. So we didn't even get to the town council, which is where we would have to get to get a resolution passed. So beginning of 2020, even before COVID started, we just said, let's just take a breather. We'll work through the steps that Bee City asked for without officially becoming a Bee City, and just sort of get other pieces of the town government used to the idea, and then we'll bring it up again. And so that's basically, I've been working with the Conservation Commission, and I've got a couple of people that I work with a lot. We have an excellent environmental planner, and I have a contact with the commission that I basically talk to a lot. And then the DPW said, hey, this sounds like a great idea. Let's do a pollinator garden in front of our headquarters. So we're planning this year to make that sort of a launch event, hopefully in May. And we might be able to get some pollinator gardens at all the schools once the construction is finished. And I think that might be happening this summer.
Yeah, the Conniff will be this summer, and some of the Hosmer also. And there definitely are pollinator gardens going in there. We've been communicating with the landscape architect. They actually gave us a copy of the landscape plan and what plants are planned, and they said we could have some input into that. So yeah, the schools are definitely behind us.
Yeah, and of course, and also Watertown Community Gardens has a pollinator plot at all their gardens, and I'm helping them plan their new one at the Arsenal Street location. So we're definitely moving on all the pieces, and we're much more interested in emphasizing the native bee aspect of it. So Lexington can be the honeybee bee city, and we'll be the native bee city.
Okay. Actually, we're doing a lot of the native pollinator gardens as well.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that going on all over the place. So it sounds like you're on your way, and if you've got the DPW agreeing to pollinator gardens in front of them, the what's in it for you, I'm not sure that I can answer that, but it's the DPW, it doesn't need to be particularly involved other than, as I said to our DPW, all you need to do is make a sign. I'm not going, I said, I was very upfront with him. I said, I am not interested in programs that create a lot of more work and expense for the town government. Believe me, my taxes here in Lexington are through the roof anyway.
But you have excellent schools.
Well, yeah, that's our big expense.
Yeah.
But as long as they knew that I was not, my intention was not to come in to any of the government and say, now you're going to need to change all your programs, or you need to do something more than you're doing. In our case, I was just trying to focus on creating a focal point. So all of these, the tree committee and the garden club. But by the way, all these, even though we had a lot of support, we got letters from the tree committee and the DPW and the garden club and the Citizens for Lexington Conservation and the Interfaith Garden, and various people all wrote in support of that. So politically, you could see that there's lots of different organizations that are supporting it. So that helped, get through the political aspects of it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm interested in definitely getting more pollinator gardens in public spaces. For instance, the DPW has this program called Adopt an Island, where they're trying to get
Oh yeah, we have that too, yeah.
and I'm not sure that anyone actually did one, but those seem like good targets for more pollinator gardens. And they do have some nice
Yeah.
plants in front of the town hall and in the square. So, that sort of stuff is mostly there. But I was thinking you had kids to enlist, and maybe we can get some of the school garden kids to speak up for bees in the future when we need to make a push.
Yeah, my daughter actually started the high school bee club when she was at Lexington High School. And I'll tell you, just she and her friends started it, and right off the bat, she said at the club fair, which they have in the fall, over 100 students signed up. It was very much supported. But there's a couple of things, you know what your bandwidth is, but first, I have done an enormous amount with this club as far as mentoring them, and if there's a bee club or a gardening club or something, somebody has to take the responsibility to mentor the kids, because a lot of these high school kids are very gung-ho but don't have the experience and the help. So I've got kids helping me. We have a teaching apiary downtown, and there were some kids who were interested in research. So we're going to be doing a citizen science project with one of the national bee groups. So you need to have, somebody to shepherd these kids through some of this. And the other thing that, you talk about doing a lot of pollinator gardens. We didn't do any pollinator gardens because I just don't have the bandwidth to maintain gardens. As I say, I love gardening, and I did manage one of our community gardens here in Lexington, but it takes up a lot of work. We have that median strip program ourselves, and the Lexington Field and Garden Club does a few, and Wilson's Farms does some, and I think probably some other organizations do, but that takes an awful lot of time and work. Yeah. Which I don't have. I'm doing a lot of other things. I don't have a lot of bandwidth to extend out, and I don't think I would have done this if it meant that I have to do a lot more. But I was already, and the town was already doing an enormous amount of pro-pollinator, pro-bee work. So it's not too difficult for me to say, we're already doing it.
Yeah, well, one thing I want to do more with the Conservation Commission is try to find out what kind of plants they're putting in wetlands, because wetlands are a great opportunity for pollinator plants. A lot of really terrific plants love wet feet and full sun, and they grow really tall, but people aren't supposed to go near most wetlands. So it's something where you can, in theory, put a bunch of Joe Pye weed in, and it'll be covered in bees, but you shouldn't bother anyone.
Yeah, Joe Pye weed is fantastic. Ironically, there's a bit of a issue between the beekeepers and a lot of the conservation groups, because the purple loosestrife is incredibly productive for bees, but it's an invasive. So, the state's trying to pull out all this purple loosestrife, and the beekeepers are saying, please leave it in. It really, really helps the bees. So, I know that.
It's not weed, it's a similar problem.
Yes, well, same with knotweed. Yeah, knotweed makes a nice red honey.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's productive for bees, but people are trying to eradicate it.
which is
Yeah.
pretty hard, right? Yeah.
Well, and then
Yeah.
the distinction is, it's great for honeybees. Who are
It's what?
general, it's great for honeybees, but it forces out the native
Yeah.
species that the specialist bees
Yeah.
depend on. So, yeah, that's where, if you're focused on native bees and native plants do go together.
Yeah.
Yeah, the loose, not loosestrife, the other one, what were we
Not
talking?
Japanese knotweed.
Go
Yeah, the
Byway.
knotweed, you know, over the
Knotweed.
years, you know, when I walk along the river path, I used to document and photograph all the wildflowers, and so many of them are just not there anymore.
Yeah.
Because loosestrife
Well,
keeps eating everything up, you know.
it's a bit of a chicken and egg problem. A lot of the reason that the flowers are not there is because the pollinators are not there. At the Interfaith Garden, the garden manager said, once we got the bees in, our produce doubled. And, you know, when you put honeybees in, it's because there's so few native pollinators left, the honeybees will pollinate flowers, you know, as far as they fly, which will enhance the environment around them.
This is why I think it's very important to focus on flowering trees in the spring for bumblebees. Because if you get the bumblebees off to a good start, then they'll be there in the summer to pollinate your tomatoes.
Yeah, that's true. And I talked to, you know, on the town property, have a piece of the front lawn which actually belongs to the town. They have, some of the roads are wider than they are in the face of the earth, and the town will plant a tree for you, and they have a list. And we worked with the botanist at Garden in the Woods to go through the list and I made our trees and told the tree committee, you know, these are the ones that are very pro-pollinator. The number one tree is the linden tree.
Yes.
You know, if you go up and look at a linden tree when it's in bloom, it'll have thousands and thousands of beautiful cream colored blooms, and the whole tree will buzz with every kind of pollinator there is all over it, from, you know, honeybees, bumblebees, native bees. They're just incredibly productive trees. And I am very thankful that, you know, people in my town before I was born planted linden trees all over the town.
And the honey from linden is delicious.
Yes.
Yeah, right. It is. It's a hugely productive. The linden tree is the most productive plant, maybe of any of them in Massachusetts, as far as bringing in a wild honey crop.
Yeah, yeah.
So, for instance, was Lexington willing to eliminate calorie pears from their street tree list?
Is that the ornamental pears?
Yeah.
Yeah, I said something to them and they said, oh, we haven't done the ornamental pears in forever. They're just lousy trees.
They are. They're bad street
for
trees.
a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's not on the list at all.
Good.
Yeah, I got a street tree, and the purple leaf plum I asked for didn't do well. So they yanked it out and they stuck a calorie pear in.
Oh,
I have this embarrassing tree in front of my house that I,
maybe you could kill it, Pam.
Can you just say a little bit about what's bad about it?
I've never seen any bees in it.
No,
Okay.
it's sterile.
Like one honeybee, you know, they check it out and then they fly away and they say, not here.
Oh, well, you know, I'm one reason why these pear trees are so bad is that you get a bad storm and they crack in half.
Right.
Oh, I'm too young for that yet, but it will.
Yeah, well, it's you know, it's no fun when you've got this tree that's been growing in front of your yard, and it gets to be 10 years old and then boom, it's gone and you have to start over again.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're just not doing that here.
Well, it doesn't exactly get full sun in front of the house anyway, so I don't know what would have done better, but we're sort of getting sidetracked. So, where are we? Oh. So we've talked about how you did it, what we could do. Does anybody have any other questions about Bee City or what, any ideas where we should go next in Watertown?
I have a question. You have you interfaced with the Watertown Farmers Market and been a table at that?
Yeah, a couple times.
Okay. Have you worked with the UU Church and their memorial garden?
Oh.
Because I go there and I'm in the garden group, and we're beautifying the memorial garden. It's just a lovely area. You know, it's right behind the CVS parking lot.
Yeah.
And they're working. We're every season now. The time is coming, but they're very open. They're trying to be pollinator, and they would love the additional expertise as one more part of your highway for
Sure.
bees.
And it's within walking distance of practically everybody on this group. Just go down there and help out or see how things are going.
Yeah, I'd love to come visit and take a look at what you have there. And if you want to shoot me an email and set
Sure.
something.
Why don't I connect you with the head woman for the group?
That'd be
But is a bigger question is, so right now, as I understand it, there was an anti-bee sentiment going on. You weren't able to get quite as far as you wanted to get. So you're backing up and you're creating pollinator gardens and trying to build support across the town.
Yes.
Anything else specific that you're doing before you resubmit for this? And when is that timeline?
Well, originally I thought it would be this year.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think we should get these plantings done, and then maybe after the summer, and people are seeing some things happening. And we do also intend to put. I want to put some kind of an educational sign at the DPW to let people know that this is a pollinator garden, especially since if you need a little neglect to really attract bees. And sometimes the garden will look a bit shaggy, and that's another reason why it's very important to have signage to let people know that it looks that way for a reason.
Right. Do people get, when you have a pollinator garden, like an individual citizen has a pollinator garden, do they get a plaque? Do they get something on their yard that says, hey, I've joined a very special elite group that's doing wonderful things for the environment? I mean, I'm just trying to think of incentives for people as a side angle to get in to the bees.
Right. Well, we do have these. I don't know how many of us have them, but the pesticide-free garden with the bee on it that you.
Okay.
I don't know where that came from. I've had it for a while.
Probably the NRDC. I think they have a plaque program. You can get a plaque from Xerces Society. It would be interesting if we could design a plaque maybe to get visibility for Friends of Bees.
So it kind of seems
Some
like
of the bee supply companies have those signs, pollinators at work, no pesticides here or something like that. So the signs are pretty ubiquitous.
And Tufts, for instance, there's the Tufts Pollinator Initiative in Medford, and they have a couple of educational gardens, and there's some big signs in the front of it explaining what pollinator gardens are all about.
yeah, because you know how when you walk around the town, you see all those black earth compost bins sitting out. It sends a big message like, boom, yeah, I'm special. Look what I do. It's right out there. And I thought,
Oh, the black earth. Yeah.
a nice way to garner a lot of support across the city. And then how could you not be a bee city? I mean, look at all these people with pollinator plaques everywhere.
Yeah, well, I was going to add to that. you know, there's a special meeting. I'm not sure when it is, maybe tonight. I don't know, about the public art.
Yeah, it's
Been
tonight.
hearing about that, guidelines for more public art in Watertown. And of course, we currently have the yard art, so that's a good beginning. But, you know, we did talk about a while ago, having some kind of mural, and there have been murals and still are in town that are painted, that there could be a bee related mural.
Yeah, I definitely, I just, it's, my contact at Mount Auburn, her name is Simone Names. And she is an artist and she does insect artwork.
Hmm.
So she's definitely a potential person to actually do the artwork. But I want something that would show like the life cycle of the bumblebee. And in each stage, you would have the flowers that would be blooming that period.
Hmm.
What about the kids, Pam? What about getting the kids together for the mural? I mean, that would tie in the schools.
Yeah, I think Ruth Henry, one of the teachers at the school, has done a couple of murals, and she has corralled kids and have them actually do the painting. So I think the mural on that at the Boys and Girls Club was done with like junior high kids, maybe something like that.
Okay.
I forget what class she teaches. But yeah, that's definitely another thing. If it was like, you know, a painting project that you could bring, you know, participation in from lots of people.
I know that the Boys and Girls Club of Watertown joined some UU members and other people in the town who were doing an anti-racism Black Lives Matter thing, and they had a parade after they made their little mural, their little plaques and banners.
Right.
And they had another parade in January for Martin Luther King Day that I believe it either ended or started in front of the Boys and Girls Club because of that mural. Yeah, it's beautiful work. I like it. I like it a lot. So should we make a plaque?
Well, there already are bee hives in Watertown. Am I correct? At Mount Auburn Cemetery,
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
which is in Watertown.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know
I
if
could brag about that.
they're in
And
Watertown
they sell the honey too.
because
Which
Which
Watertown
is
has several
illegal in Watertown, but we did have to make, make the case that, you know, this was an example of the guidelines being way too rigid. That supposedly everything that's being done with bees at Mount Auburn Cemetery would be illegal according to the regulations. So, I don't know, maybe technically the hives are in the Cambridge part of the cemetery.
No, the Cambridge part of the cemetery is just at the
front gate.
beginning of it on Mount Auburn Street.
All right, so they are in Watertown, but
Yeah.
I don't know that anyone actually enforces those stupid regulations. So I'm guessing.
I think that's probably what's going on is,
Yeah.
you know, New Bedford has outlawed bees. They did that back in the 70s, that you're not allowed to keep bees in the city limits. And Cambridge has some pretty draconian things, and people just ignore them.
Right.
I'm pretty sure the Watertown regulation was modeled on the Cambridge draft.
Yes, that was part of our bad luck, was that we were trying to do this at the very time that people in Cambridge were getting hysterical.
And that whole thing with the rooftop, that's what's going on while we were trying to get the Board of Health to listen to us.
Yeah, so the person in charge of it on the Board of Health was operating completely from a defensive place of trying to head off lawsuits.
Yeah.
Do you think you could get support from NOFA?
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
We're also, NOFA has just created a new statewide pollinator network. And I've also been participating with more of a Boston area network. It's the Mystic Charles Pollinator Pathways. And they are trying, they do have a map that they want people to put their gardens on, and they're trying to figure out ways to connect things together. So as you say, the pathways.
Oh, great. Like an emerald necklace of bees.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
there's so many of those out there, you know, once you start looking, there's so many groups that are so pro-pollinator,
yeah.
and you just kind of cobble them together and show incredible support
Mm.
Huh.
So
for what you're doing.
I've actually, the Mystic Charles, the Pollinator Pathways people will be speaking at the May meeting of Watertown Citizens. So that's on May, April? Yeah, May 19th. So they'll be our guests then, and so just when everyone's ready to plant, they'll be talking about gardens and the best things to put in there.
You know, Alex, I've been attending these NOFA garden classes every Tuesday night for many weeks now. And Alex, you could be a guest speaker as a master beekeeper if you haven't done it already.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak about bees. I don't do a lot of speaking about flowers. Almost all flowers are pollinated by bees. That's the general rule. There's a few exceptions, but most of them are pollinated by bees. So, you know, a pollinator garden, people say, what can I plant for the bees? And almost anything. There are a few things that are fabulous, like the Joe Pye weed or sedum, or, you know, some of these things that you see bees on all the time.
Yeah,
But
the herb. Yeah.
yeah, I'm an expert on bees, but not as much an expert on horticulture.
This is why honeybees are so good for people, because we can do almost anything and they like it.
What is the class you're taking, or the group, Melinda, that you mentioned?
It's a NOFA has had it for a good month and a half now on Tuesday nights, and it's, you know, last night was perennial shrubs and trees. One night was just soil. One night was just vegetable gardens, but I can see how, and a native natural gardening where you don't use anything that you didn't find, you know, in the ground. And it's and bees alone would be a topic that I bet you they.
And what does NOFA stand for?
Oh, New England Organic Farmers Association.
Good.
And
Thank you.
that's so good. And there's at least 150 people on every Zoom call.
Wow.
And I mean, just Pam and Alex and Sharon. I don't know.
Yeah, one of the
Panel.
talks that I give, there's an interesting phenomenon going on now. You know, when I started keeping bees back in the 70s, I'm sure I was the only beekeeper in my high school, and you know, people thought I was crazy that I would keep bees. And now there's a lot of people who you know, think it's cool, and they start up and try keeping bees. And the irony is that it is so much more difficult now. So a lot of people are spending a lot of money and time and effort and trying to keep their bees alive, and then their bees may die over the winter, and it's very frustrating. So one of the talks that I give is to people who are thinking about becoming beekeepers, because it's a major commitment now in terms of learning the expertise. And you know, it costs about $1,000, you know, by the time you pay for all the equipment and the class and the bee suit, and the bees are you know, right now about $200 to a starter kit of bees. So you know, by the time you go through this, it's a rather expensive and time-consuming commitment. So, you know, from time to time, I give this speech to tell people about, if you're thinking about becoming a beekeeper, here are some of the considerations that you want to do. It's not, you know, sometimes people are trying to sell these gimmicks like the flow hive or something, suggesting that you just buy it, put it out in the yard, and you're good to go, but it's unfortunately not like that at all.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I started paying attention to bees when the whole colony collapse was, in the news. And I, looked up being a beekeeper, and it just seems so expensive and so much work. And I'm basically a very lazy person. So I went the other direction and just paid attention to what bees do I have in my yard. And I just started taking pictures, and I uploaded the pictures to Bug Guide and found out what they were. And in the first summer, I had identified 12 different species of bees just in my own backyard.
Hmm.
And so being lazy is great for native bees because they don't want you to disturb the soil. They don't want you to clean things up in the fall. They don't want you to mess with anything. Just let them do their work. And
Yeah, I'm always posting, something on social media, leave the leaves.
keep the leaves.
Yeah.
I just did spring cutting on the I cut the standing stems to 1 to 2 foot lengths today, and I really had to stop myself from picking up the ones that had fallen from last year. Because what happens is you're trying to create habitat for bees that will lay eggs in them during the summer. And then the following year, the next generation will come out. So once they fall over, you have to leave the stems alone.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's
And
hard.
that's something I only learned just last year, and I've been cleaning up all these stems, and I was thinking, I should have lots more bees than I do, shouldn't I?
That's what the science should be about,
Yeah,
how to manage a pollinator garden and the
Yeah.
benefits of not making everything just clean. I
Yeah.
love the leave the leaf stuff. There's some nice posters of that, but
yeah. Well, that's why I felt the urge to write up my little document, and it starts with managing the garden, and then I suggest some plants, and that's in there.
Thank
I-
you all. I have to leave at 8, so.
Okay, yeah, it's almost 8.
Okay, well, I wish you well, and you have my contact information now. So if you have any other questions going along, it was my hope when we started with Lexington that there would be other towns doing this as well. So I think it's wonderful that you're doing it, and please feel free to contact me if I can help you folks in any way.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks. I was really surprised to find that there wasn't any, in 2019, that there wasn't already a bee city in Massachusetts, because Marty Dagobert of NOFA has been working very hard to get towns to do resolutions of just no pesticides. And there's like half a dozen, at least there might be a dozen towns by now that have done this, but not joining up with Xerces to do bee city. So we're starting. Oh, and Tufts University, the Tufts Pollinator Initiative, I think they became a bee campus in the beginning of 2020. So I mean, they're also fairly new. So
It's good.
it's-
So
it's probably-
Jumbos.
Lexington can be a model for Bee City, and at some point, maybe we should try again to use the Belmont beekeeping suggestions as the model for Watertown.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, if you find that Watertown might be willing to reconsider the regulation, let me know. I'm an
Yes.
attorney, and I am
oh yes, that would
have
be
no problem going in and telling them, this is why Belmont did what it did. It works extremely well for everyone. And we are holding out, the Massachusetts Beekeeper Association holds out Belmont as the model of how it should be done.
that would be great that you're an attorney, because they were thinking legalistically.
Right. I know they do, and it's always easier to say no than to, worry about how to do it. But
Yes.
in fact, you can't just give, the neighbors veto rights over anything that
Yeah, that's nuts.
happens.
Well, Alex,
Yeah.
I just wanted to, this is totally off topic, but I've been admiring your background. And is that wallpaper or a mural?
Oh, no, I live in it's a mural. Let's see if I can,
It's
I
gorgeous.
live in the house I grew up in, so this
Oh.
is,
Oh,
I had a wall painted by
Oh,
an
my.
artist. It's
Wonderful.
Really beautiful.
one wall of this room is a
Cool.
woodland scene.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
All
Yeah,
right.
it's nice.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for joining us and giving us all this encouraging advice. And we'll definitely look you up. Keep you apprised.
Please do stay in touch and let me know how it goes, and good luck to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Nice to meet everyone.
yeah,
right.
thanks,
Thank you.
Alex.
Thank
All
you.
right.
All right. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.